So in this video, we're going to find out who would actually win in a battle of wits between the two smartest characters in the world of The Boys, Stan Edgar and Billy Butcher. Now, it's no surprise that The Boys has taken Hollywood and the world by storm. The show came at a time where there weren't many like it. Definitely not many superhero fiction like it. It's a show that is not afraid to be unapologetically and unequivocally unhinged. Like, basically, this show is everything Marvel does well with their darker comics, but better. And unsurprisingly, it works. I mean, everyone cannot get enough of this show. It's made headlines everywhere, and just even talking about it has helped this channel grow from about 200 to 500 subscribers. Thank you, viewers, by the way. So obviously the writers and producers are doing a very good job with this. They're nailing the characterization, plot, basically everything. But there is one minor problem though. You see, The Boys introduced us to an ensemble of different characters with different motivations. A lot of these characters are mostly satire or straight up parodies of the different types of people we see in real life. So intrinsically, a lot of the characters are not the brightest bud in the room. You'd be genuinely surprised at how long it took me to think of anyone apart from Stan, Edgar, and Butcher that were really smart. Half the characters are just painfully dumb, and the other half can't go a day without being toxic to save their grandma. So the two people we're going to be looking at today are Stan and Butcher. Now, some other characters are smart when they want to be, especially the boys themselves. I think every one of them is resourceful and can be smart when the situation calls for it. And some other honorable mentions would have to be Stormfront and Madeline, as both of them were known schemers and achieved the feat of bending Homelander to their whims. Then we've also got Starlight, cause she's Starlight. And the word smart is a sort of broad term. I mean, it's not something that has like one clear and cut definition per se. Some people may be book smart, some people may be tech savvy. Meanwhile, some people are just acutely aware of their environment and situation, and are capable of planning effectively to adapt or counteract any inconvenience. For this video, we'll be going with the last definition, and that's why I think Stan and Butcher are the two smartest characters in the series by the standard. If you disagree with me, you can let me know in the comments, but this is just my opinion. Anyway, we're going to be pitting the two against each other in terms of strategy and cunning and wit, and determine who is the superior mind, the CEO of the diabolical company Vought, or the leader of the fearless rebel sect, The Boys. Now, when we're talking about Butcher, it's obvious he has a few screws loose. Okay, a lot of screws. However, that doesn't mean he can't use his big old brain. He's a former SAS soldier and a CIA operative, which, by the way, how could they even allow this guy into the CIA? Anyway, these facts tell us that by default, Butcher's kind of a bright chap. Right from the very first time we meet him, he already seems like a cunning individual with the way he interacts with Huey. And he just comes up with this plan that can really only be described as crazy. When A-Train runs through Huey's girlfriend just cuz, Butcher learns about the incident and sees Huey as an easy mark that he could target and essentially use for his cause, and this actually works out for him. He's able to somehow convince Huey to risk his life by planting a bug in Vought HQ, in the exact area that harbors the Seven, the most powerful and dangerous soups in the world. If that is not a crazy feat, I don't know what is. Not only was he able to convince Huey to do that, he essentially just recruited a new member into his group, because he knew once Huey did that, there was no going back. Whether or not they caught him at that moment, they would still catch on to him. And he manipulates MM and Frenchie like this too. Now the argument can be made that some part of them wanted to be a part of the boys again, but ultimately it was Butcher's cunning that really sealed their fates. They obviously wouldn't want to be a part of the group again, seeing as though things went really south the last time. However, here they are again, doing the exact same thing they thought they would never have to do again. A part of being smart is being able to convince people, or in Butcher's case manipulate them, to work for your benefit, and there is probably no one in the show that does this quite like Butcher. We've also got to credit Butcher with thinking on his feet when it comes to the soups, and I think that's one of the reasons he was able to hold his own against literal superpowered beings, despite not being one himself, apart from season 3, which just opens another can of worms, but we're not going there now. We'll still get to that. Anyway, Butcher's really good with handling soups, and from season 1 we see his approach of trying to destroy them. He goes for information, he observes, he does the groundwork. That's how he learned about Compound V through A-Train and Popclaw, and that's how he was also able to use that knowledge to his advantage. During the Believe Expo, Billy Butcher convinces Huey to trick Starlight into getting him entrance tickets to meet with beloved brother Ezekiel. and this is so they can get information on where the V is kept, which could then be presented as solid evidence in the court against Vought. He also comes up with this elaborate plan to corner Homelander by kidnapping Madeline and strapping C4 explosives onto her. Now, I have to point out that this wasn't exactly the best course of action. There are a lot of things that could have gone wrong with this. First of all, the plan was solid up to the point where it just wasn't anymore. Butcher had no plan to get a confession out of Homelander or even get something that could be incriminating and used against him later on. He also didn't take into account how he would escape that situation. Really, his only goal was to kill Madeline and kill himself in the process, which now that I think about it is just really dumb, and it kinda defeats the whole point of a smartness in this scenario. Butcher's apathy towards death and his hatred for Homelander is a strength, and it does make him formidable. However, it's also a notable weakness, as we just saw, and if not for pure luck, Butcher was almost certainly dead. William Butcher also shines in his ability to keep the gang together even in the most unfavorable conditions, which in truth is not an easy thing to do because of how radical the boys are. It would take someone truly intelligent and brilliant to manage them, especially considering the fact that they're going up against literal superpowered beings. Butcher has his moments throughout the rest of the show. I mean, he was able to make Stan call off Black Noir when he came after him. He was able to formulate and execute a plan to save Ryan. He was even able to not only locate Soldier Boy, who was locked up in a Russian base, but also rescue him. And probably the most impressive feat that Butcher was able to achieve in this show is that he actually found several chances to take down Vought, with the most notable being Vogelbaum's testimony against them. And if not for our friendly head popper, Vought would have been in a lot of trouble. Granted, we're not exactly sure how the government would react even after the witness, seeing as Vought always finds a way to escape tough situations. However, what I am sure of is that they would be engaged in way less movies and way more lawyers. Now let's talk about Stan for a bit. Stan Edgar is probably the most revered non-soup in the entire show. Throughout season 1, he was this enigmatic presence who never really could be bothered to come down to deal with the Seven directly, leaving that responsibility entirely to Madeline. It's hard to determine exactly why he did that. I'm just going to assume he was dealing with something of more urgency, like ordering Newman to monitor the deputy director of the CIA so she can blow her head off when she's onto something. Anyway, we get introduced to him properly in season 2 when Butcher and the boys become even more of a threat to Vought. And at this point, with Madeline dead, he has to be in charge or else Homelander and his cronies are going to destroy everything. And the moment we're introduced to him, we realize almost immediately why he's at the pinnacle of this company. He's everything you'd think the CEO of Vought is, and more. He's manipulative, he's ruthless, he's very unethical, and he's a workaholic. In his meeting with the US Secretary of Defense, he shows us a glimpse of that tactical mind of his when they discuss the terms of the contract, and he makes it quite obvious that he's not anybody's puppet, including the White House. This poise alone allows him to get a better deal with the secretary. Later in the same episode, Homelander pays him a visit to discuss his displeasure over Stormfront's inclusion into the Seven. And let's just say Stan put the man in his place very quickly. That said, the dynamics between Homelander and Stan are very complex, and if you want to know more about that, you can watch my Why Homelander Can't Kill Stan Edgar video. Stan has severally evaded all of Butcher and anyone else's attempts at exposing Vought for the truly villainous company they are. When the boys finally manage to expose Compound V to the public, it is devastating. Stock prices are crumbling and Stan's lawyers tell him that criminal charges could be brought against him. But guess what Stan does? He still remains calm, collected, and is more worried about the super terrorists in the boys' custody, which could spell trouble for them later on, if not dealt with. And this reveals Stan's strong suit. He is a calculative man who knows how to walk through fire without getting burnt, and laugh in the face of a storm. He literally turned the whole situation on its head with just a few moves. It's quite impressive. This action alone is far more than all his lawyers, PR, and damage control could have ever done, and he thought to do it, just like that. And with the whole Stormfront thing, it's like trying to pick every grain in a bag of rice, just uncovering all his motives with her. However, what we do know is what he said to Butcher in their one and only physical meeting, and that is that he needed someone who could cause a little controversy, thus in turn selling more V, which raises stock prices. It's a whole thing, it's a very calculated business move, and Stan is probably the only person in the whole show who could pull this off. I think anyone with these attributes is truly dangerous, and often that person is really smart. Another person I can think of like this is the Joker. if you catch my drift. And what do you know, Stan somehow manages to put up the flame. He pins the whole thing on dear old dead Madeline during the press conference and claims he's going to investigate it. And at the same time, he utilizes one of his cards, Stormfront, everyone's new soup star, because she kills the dangerous super terrorist that was threatening American lives. And this is in an attempt to convince people that while the soups are made from Compound V, they are still a great asset to the country and the state needs the Compound V to defend its citizens. Stan is also really good at eliminating potential major threats to the company, and he does this with a number of people working under him, both soups and non-soups who are at his beck and call. Two of his major players are obviously Congresswoman Newman, or Nadia, which is her true identity, and Black Noir, and these two people have helped him deal with a considerable amount of people without him ever having to get his hands dirty. In Season 3, we see him make moves to try and change things around VOD. Essentially, his plan is to return VOD to its original design of being mainly a pharmaceutical/military contractor. And he does this because he starts to realize that the heroes are becoming more of a pain in the ass than an asset, and it's making everything that much more annoying. He doesn't want to have to handle the soups and their screw-ups any longer, which is understandable, let's be honest, because at that point, I'd be fed up too. Stan also makes Starlight co-captain of the Seven to present them in a more positive light after the whole Stormfront Nazi incident. Let's not forget that he also somehow managed to gain control of the very corporation that was meant to keep VOD in check. That would be the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs, which is overseen by Victoria Newman, who is Stan's asset. And this charade went on fine for several months and would have probably continued that way if Victoria hadn't betrayed him for Homelander. Some may say that Victoria Newman was Stan's weakness as much as she was his asset. She was the only one he ever showed genuine compassion for, and that meant she could be targeted to get to him. Homelander found out about this and used that knowledge to his advantage, and as we know, it led to Stan's departure from VOD. And even then, Stan still seemed like a winner in this, after he served Homelander a bowl of hot truth, calling him bad product, and pointing out the fact that both he and VOD wouldn't last without him. It was his final boss move and I expected nothing less. Stan already even hinted at leaving VOD when he told Madeline that he would soon retire and he would leave her to run, in his own words, this shit show. So he may or may not have been satisfied with his exit from VOD, but that's a discussion for another day. And the list goes on with Stan's feats, but these are just a few of the things he's done within the short stay on the show. Obviously, he's a very competent, highly intelligent individual who is an expert with dealing with people and tough situations. But that begs the question, how does he hold up against Billy Butcher? If their somewhat invisible battle went on any longer, who would triumph? Well, to put it plainly, Stan wins. I mean, Butcher sure has had his moments, but his feats are nothing compared to the straight up mastermind plans that Stan conceives. Sure, Butcher might be able to manipulate and convince competent individuals to work with him, and he's very good at thinking of great ways to deal with the soups, but as we saw with the scene with Madeline, he still makes erratic choices based on emotion sometimes. And what further proves this is in Season 3 with Homelander's son. After Butcher somehow managed to remove Ryan from VOD and Homelander's custody, and when the boy finally had his trust, he pushes him away because he just generally thinks he would fuck it up with Ryan. He knows he's a horrible person and he thought what was best for Ryan was that he should probably be nowhere near him. However good-ish, depending on who you ask, his intentions were, it doesn't just make sense, and it eventually caused Homelander to have Ryan right where he wanted him, by his side, which is a major problem and is going to be even worse in Season 4 for everybody. Not only this, there's also the issue with how he handles the boys, being unempathetic toward them a lot and downright evil sometimes. And although he continues to somehow convince them to work with him, the fluctuating distrust always leads to some slip-up, which later comes back to bite them in the ass. There's also the scenario with the Temp V and just how unbelievably hypocritical and irrational he was being, that was actually pretty stupid. I mean, yeah, you could argue he needed Temp V to handle Soldier Boy and take on Homelander, but I'm willing to bet there are better ways to go about it, and he most certainly did not need to start treating it like he had a addiction. To be honest, I think Season 3 Butcher is probably the dumbest version of him so far, and it really highlighted just how flawed he is. And more importantly, it showed us that his emotions are not only a weakness, but are detrimental in the long run. Stan Edgar, on the other hand, well, there's no need to go over his clearly impressive feats again. For the most part, he thwarted most of Butcher and the boys' efforts to bring down Vought, and probably Butcher's only win against him was that he was able to secure Ryan. At least before he threw him away to Homelander. So there you have it, folks. Stan Edgar is undoubtedly the smartest character in the boys' world, and will also remain Vought's best and only capable boss. Who do you think is smarter between the two? Let me know in the comments. If you also have any other honorable mentions you'd like to add, let me know as well. Let's have a discussion. Don't forget to like this video and triple please subscribe if you haven't already. You'll be helping this channel a great deal. I'm on my way to 1K subs. Let's make it happen, guys. Till next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.